After 14 years of struggle, a recanting medical examiner, a lawsuit, a docuseries, and a community petition with over 160,000 signatures, hopes for the family of Ellen Greenberg were again dashed when a new independent report found that her death was best classified as suicide. Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday, October 15th, 2025, and this is your Wednesday Night Live brought to you by Courtroom Confidential. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Courtroom Confidential, obviously being the fastest growing true crime news channel on YouTube. Pardon me while I get all my notes together. Thank you, everyone, for showing up. So good to see many of you. Mary Fitz and Pammy and Wendy Joan and Teresa Robinson, Emmy Nikolov, Melanie Greenberg. So glad to see all of you, old faces, new faces. By old faces, I mean people I'm used to seeing who join us every single night, and we appreciate your support. New faces, by people I mean that names that might be new, and if this is your first time, welcome. This is Courtroom Confidential. My name is Joshua Ritter. I'm a former prosecutor with the LA District Attorney's Office. I was there for about 10 years. I left to go into private practice as a criminal defense attorney. This is Courtroom Confidential, where we do our best to present to you both sides of the courtroom. And this is our Wednesday Night Live from Courtroom Confidential, your midweek check-in on all things true crime. And if this is your first time joining us, you are in for a treat, because we have a very special guest to talk about some news that broke just a couple of days ago. That is, if you've been following this case, you might still be recovering from it. You might still be kind of waking up from the shock of the news that broke just a few days ago. Our guest this evening is Gavin Fish, a big friend of mine, a investigative reporter, a YouTuber, and somebody who has probably been following and living with the Ellen Greenberg case longer than most, especially certainly those who are on YouTube. So we'll be talking to him. He's very close to the Greenberg family, getting their reactions to all of this. We'll talk about the report that recently came out by the medical examiner who was assigned to give an quote unquote independent review of this case. We'll get into all of it. We'll go through the report, get reactions, fill you guys in on the latest on that. But then stick around, because there are some updates on other cases. The Bionca Ellis case, there was a verdict today. The Courtney Clenney case, there were some interesting updates on that. And in the Christopher Schultes, I will forever call it Schultz, but in the Christopher Schultes case, some interesting decisions being made by the judge in that case. So like I said, stick around. In the meantime, if you haven't already, please like this episode. Please subscribe if you're still on the fence about it, and share this with anyone who you think might enjoy it. I understand there are some problems with YouTube. So if you're having trouble signing on, if you're getting bounced, if you're dealing with difficulties, my apologies. Obviously, I can't do anything about that. YouTube, I can't ever get them on the phone. They don't want to listen to me. But I appreciate you sticking with us, and I appreciate you dealing with the difficulties, even if you're having to watch some of this late. All right, let's go ahead and get our friend on here. Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. I'm looking at some of the comments, and it's all, what is this problem? I keep getting bounced. This is a nightmare. But then we've got Best Nancy, who says, hi, everyone. So good to hear from you, Best Nancy. Thank you guys for putting up with all of this. Pammy says, I see you and hear you, Josh. Y'all keep trying. Okay, well, keep trying, friends, says Kaylin. Yeah, stick around, everybody. Don't give up. You're not going to want to miss this one. Gavin.
Yes.
14 years this has been going on.
Almost 15.
Almost 15. I don't know how long you have personally been living it. I know it's very long. I know that you've been kind of tied to the story for a long period of time, but the Greenbergs have been living it for close to 15 years. First, they're dealing with the loss of their only daughter, which is a tragedy that I don't care who you are. That's a tragedy that you're never going to get over. But then on top of that, they're part of this, this, how do I put this right? an unlucky group of folks who not only experience the loss of a loved one, but then it forever becomes part of kind of true crime history. And it's forever kind of documentaries are produced about it. YouTube channels are following it. Many people, they grieve and they grieve in silence. And I don't know if that's makes it better or worse, but for the Greenbergs, they've not only been grieving, but then it's been in this very public way that we all are following it, but we're following it because we care a lot about them, because of what they're going through, because we all have strong feelings on this case. I know you included. So this is my long windup to say, recently, a 32-page report was released on October 10th, just a few days ago, by the Chief Medical Examiner of Philadelphia. Her name is Lindsay Simon. We're going to go through all of it, but the part that is most impactful is this. With all of this information, so this is after 32 pages of walking us through everything that she's considered, it is the opinion of the undersigned. The manner of Ellen Greenberg's death is best classified as suicide. Full stop. What is your just gut reaction to that?
I was completely expecting it.
Really?
Yeah. Philadelphia for almost 15 years now has been putting Josh and Sandy through the ringer. I've never put my faith, since looking at this case, and I think that's about 4 years for me, maybe close to 5 now, have I ever felt that Philadelphia would ever do the right thing. Back in February, when Josh and Sandy made entered into a settlement with the defendants, which were employees of the city of Philadelphia, and I heard that they're going to do an independent review in the city's own medical examiner's office, I went, well, we know what that's going to say. I'm disappointed. I guess I'd be very surprised though if it came back as anything else. You would have seen Fat Gavin doing backflips down the road, man. Yeah.
I feel like you're not shocked though that it didn't come back like inconclusive, at least.
Well, maybe it's just cynicism at this point. But look, Dr. Osborne, who did the original autopsy, I think he did a poor job at his report. He got it right the first time, and it was only under pressure by members of law enforcement and prosecution within the city of Philadelphia that he changed his mind. And he said in his deposition, it was in that meeting that I changed my mind. So for me, I thought, well, if the machine that wants to hide Ellen Greenberg's death, her murder, were able to get to him, why can't they get to anybody else? I just didn't feel like it was ever going to be independent nor unbiased. If they ever wanted something independent or unbiased, it should not be in Philadelphia. It should be elsewhere.
I'm trying to be very careful here because I don't want to put you fully on the spot. I know how strongly you feel about this. So I guess what I'm saying is, please don't take these questions as if I'm cross-examining you or trying to impeach you. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. Go for it.
Here is what, in light of what you just said, though, the medical examiner starts out, and I don't know this, Lindsay Simon. I don't know Philadelphia as well as you do, but maybe I am naive in trying to believe that there are good people out there trying to do their job right? So I don't know her. I don't know the office she works in, but she starts out the report by saying, this review was conducted independently, with all opinions being those of the undersigned without influence by any of the involved parties. So they're not, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, if that is not true, she has certainly set herself up for a lawsuit or something down the road. I mean, they make a big show of trying to say this is entirely independent. And then they go on to list a bunch of things that she did review, including the documentary recently.
Yeah.
Was there anything not on that list or anything on that list that was shocking to you?
Yeah, actually the things on the list that bothered me that she showed, or that she reviewed for the purpose of this, was everything outside of autopsy photographs, Dr. Osborne's notes, anything that had to do with that office. And remember also that it took them 10 months. Let's be fair, 8 months to generate this 32-page report. 8 months.
Yeah.
They were supposed to do it expeditiously. Even Judge Carpenter, who was the kind of like pit judge in this one, the one that did all of the motions and stuff like that, she said expeditious to me sounds like a week. Expeditious, maybe a month, but it was 8 months. Why would she include the documentary as part of what she would consider? Yeah. Transcripts of doctors Emery, Galino, and Osborne. That has nothing to do with determining manner of death. There are police reports to look at. There are the MEO's reports to look at. There are photographs from the actual autopsy. There are Dr. Osborne's notes. That's all she should be considering. And
do you go ahead, please.
Well, I'm a professional quibbler, right? So to quibble with myself for just a second.
Yeah.
I have a friend who is a quadruple board certified forensic pathologist. He worked in the Erie County, New York medical examiner's office. He worked in the Allegheny County coroner's office. He's got all the bona fides. And so if I'm going to quibble with myself a little bit, he has told me that circumstance has a lot to do with manner. Right. So they do take into consideration what happened at the scene, what the scene looked like. But all of that was documented by Mr. Olszewski of the medical examiner's office. She didn't need to talk to the police. She didn't need to see their reports. She didn't need to read transcripts. She has whatever she would have used to determine a manner of death in any other case, maybe one that happened yesterday. That's all I think she should have used.
I wonder if less than conspiracy, it's a report written in fear, because you include all of those things. To me, like, especially the documentary stands out. You include that if you're fearful that after you write this report, somebody's going to say, well, why didn't you look at this? Why didn't you consider this? So it's like, hey, everybody, I looked at the universe. I mean, I'm surprised she didn't include a Wikipedia page in here. It's like, I looked at everything, just so you can't come back at me and say I didn't give this a thorough review. Do you think it was running scared?
It could be a little CYA. Sure.
Yeah.
One of the things that we don't consider a lot as lay people, maybe you consider it as a lawyer, but the last numbers that I have tell me that there are only about 400-ish working medical examiners in the entire United States. And it's an interesting crew, right? They actually have an association, the North American Association of Forensic or Medical Examiners, something like that. So they have like a little union. They are overburdened. They're overworked. In my opinion, again, as a lay person, I think that they are people that get along with dead people more than they get along with the living. They're cut from a different cloth from the rest of us. So yeah, maybe it's not conspiracy, maybe it is fear. But I just didn't expect anything fair coming out of Philly, period.
I want to get into more of the report itself, because I part of me talking to you is I want your reaction, but part of it is I want to share with everybody what is actually in this report, because it is, to be fair, more than just conclusory. I mean, she does go through, at least gives lip service to some things.
Yeah.
Go ahead and put that back up, Tiffany. Therapist, thank you so much for gifting the memberships and kicking us off this evening. Again, guys, I apologize. I know that people are still dealing with getting on here, so I appreciate you being persistent. Dr. Patrice Berry, good to see you. I'm glad the video is working. I couldn't get other YouTube videos to play. It was a sign. Maybe it'll work to our benefit and everything else is shut down and we're the only ones up. But sorry, guys, for all the trouble. Again, I will write a strongly worded letter to YouTube. You spoke to Josh and Sandy. You're very close with them. You said to me before that you speak to Sandy once a week. I know that you've talked to them since this all happened. And by the way, everybody who's watching, please subscribe to Gavin's channel. It's at Gavin Fish. And he has a video that you can check out once YouTube is fully working, that you did earlier today speaking with them. Could you share with us a little bit about what their thoughts are, what their reaction is to all of this? I can't imagine what they're going through.
Yeah, they described it as a gut punch.
Wow.
Anytime I talk mostly with Sandy. When I get a call from Josh, I know that I'm in for a special treat, right? He doesn't call very often,
Right.
but I talk to Sandy a lot, and what she has perfected the art of over the almost 15 years is the art of managing her own expectations.
Yeah.
Right. They have been beaten so many times, have gotten bad news so many times over the course of this, that she just never really gets excited, or she never really sets her expectations high. Having said that, yeah, they both said it was a gut punch. They got it Friday afternoon. I got it late Friday night. Talked to them, on Saturday. Yeah, it was really painful for them, though. They also kind of expected the same thing.
I was going to say, do they share your kind of lack of shock by it? I mean, it sounds like they've been through so much for so long. They might feel the same way as far as like, did we really expect anything different?
Yeah, it's close, except that they have actual skin in the game, right? So to you and to me, this is just kind of a, I don't want to, it's not entertainment. I mean, we care more about it than just, being entertained by it. But to them, this is their baby girl.
Yeah.
Right. If you go to my website, look at the pictures of Ellen when she was a little girl, and don't tell me that you don't feel some sort of paternal or maternal instinct toward that little girl who, whose future was going to end on a kitchen floor. But to us, I mean, we do feel those feels because we are sympathetic, we're empathetic, but to them, this is their baby girl. This is their daughter. This has been their mission in life. So yeah, while they do, I think, in my opinion, share the same view that Philadelphia will never do the right thing, it still hurts them quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading some of the comments, and it seems across the board, everyone is ranging from frustrated to shocked to disgusted to dismayed. Ramp all of that up to 11 when it's the idea that it's your loved one and your only daughter. And this is basically what you've made your life mission for the last 10 plus years. I can't imagine what they're going through. And, like
did you watch the documentary?
I did.
So there was a couple of moments in the documentary that I had never heard out of Josh or Sandy before. One of them was when Sandy was describing laying down on the floor in the sunshine. I think it was next to the dog, because that's all she could do. Right. And when I met Josh and Sandy, it had been 10 years since it had happened. And they were the gritty fighters that they had turned into. But, in the beginning, they were just devastated people. And when Sandy described how all I could do was lay on the floor in the sunshine, that broke me.
Well, I mean, it's like we said to start all of this. Anytime somebody loses a loved one, especially a child, there are people who lose children and it's devastating to them no matter what the circumstances. A car accident and they lose a child, and that is something that you can barely put one foot in front of the other. And then there's these people who are in this unique, horrible group who that way that their child met their end happens to be in a way that's takes on a meaning outside of all of that. I think about the Idaho 4 with the Brian Koberger. They lost children. They're devastated beyond belief, no matter how they lost those children. And then add to that it was at the hands of this monster, and that this will be a case that we talk about for decades to come. And I think the Greenbergs are experiencing, something similar to that to some extent. All right, Jude Evans, thank you so much for gifting the membership. Appreciate you, Jude. Bess Nancy, thank you so much for your generosity. Kathy, you're fantastic. Thank you for the super chat. Says happy 20th wedding anniversary to the bestest hubster ever. Love you, Tom Vaughn. All right, nice. Big shout out to Tom Vaughn. Laura Waldy, thank you so much for gifting the membership. Appreciate you. Ezza 1990, appreciate the super chat. Says love the Courtney Confidential family. Well, we love having you as a part of it. Ezza. Chihuahua Mama, wow, big. I missed all these. Chihuahua Mama, thank you for the membership. Teresa Clay for being a member for 9 months. Love it here and appreciate you all. Thank you guys so much for all of this. I want to let's get into some of the highlights of this report. Okay, just so that we make sure that we kind of check the boxes here. Okay, so we talked about they make a big deal of starting out and saying it's an independent review. They make a big deal of saying all of the materials that they reviewed. Mm-hmm. Then she starts to go into the injuries themselves, and she talks about, this is a quote that stood out to me because it seems very different from what any layperson would think and from what I've heard from other experts in this field. Quote, while the distribution of injuries is admittedly unusual, the fact remains that Ellen would be capable of inflicting these injuries herself. And then she goes on to note that she was a woman suffering from anxiety and describes many of the wounds as hesitation wounds. In other words, tentative self-inflicted injuries. That last part I want to talk about first. Hesitation wounds, I think, is fair. No, I mean, we talk about 20 wounds, but these are not 20 wounds up to the handle. Many of them could be described as superficial. Does not mean it could not be homicide, but it is at least an indicator of self-harm that they see or a telltale sign that they'll see in cases of self-harm.
Yes.
Where I'm most kind of shocked by this is that how is she saying the fact remains that Ellen would be capable of inflicting these injuries herself? What is your reaction to that? I don't know how you put that it doesn't seem like the type of wording from a medical examiner to me.
Yeah, so the hesitation wound thing, the vast majority of these now 23 wounds, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit, but are less than 1/8 of an inch deep. They do appear. I mean, when you look at the crime scene photos, the medical examiner's investigator was a guy named Steve Olszewski, and he was taking the photos. And there's one photo where you can tell that with one hand he's holding the camera, and with the other gloved hand he's lifting up Ellen's shirt just below her bust, which shows a whole bunch of these little pokes, right? And to me, you can tell that he's like, oh, hesitation wounds. He did not look at the back of her head. There wasn't tons of blood on this one, Josh, because most of the blood was internal. Most of the bleeding was internal. So I think it was reasonable at the time to go, those look like hesitation wounds. But I think if he would have looked at the back of her, he would have went, oh, okay, no, this is not what I think it is. With the idea that Ellen could do that to herself, that was one of the first two things that I looked at in this case. I'd gotten all the documents, and I was reading through all the arguments and all of the different, reports and everything like that. And the very first thing I did was convince my wife. We took like a stir stick, like a paint stir stick, cut it to the exact dimensions of the knife. And my wife is 5'7". She weighs about the same as Ellen, though we are admittedly older now. But it was like, okay, can you do this? Can you do this to yourself?
Physically, yeah.
Yeah. And we couldn't figure out a way that one would be able to do this. And actually, I think my wife, as a yogini, would be maybe the one with the best flexibility and the
Right.
best ability to contort herself into a position where she could do that. I was unconvinced that she could. And then Tom Brennan, in his investigation, he hired, or I don't know if they hired her or not, but they used a female police officer to try to do the same thing, and they couldn't either. So yeah, the doctor coming to the conclusion that Ellen could have done those things to herself is, I don't know, it's unbelievable to me.
And you can't kind of drift past this point and move along to your other fight. Like, this is a central point here. If she could not physically do it, what are we having a debate about? Right. Like, yes. I mean, that is, that's no longer medical expertise and everything else. That's just physics, right? I mean, you just physically, scientifically cannot achieve this, then we don't have to talk about superficial wounds, hesitation, DNA, all of the other nonsense. It doesn't matter. It seems to me like more probably should have been dedicated to that. And again, the way she writes it, I'm used to a medical examiner saying something like, the wounds are not inconsistent with the physical capabilities of a female of her age and build as we know it. Something along those lines. Very kind of, it's because medical examiners deal with the world of possibilities.
Yes.
So you whenever you say possible, they're always going to couch it in very, well, anything's nearly possible. But she made it sound like, I mean, she says the fact remains that she would be capable. To me, that is such a conclusive statement and shocking to be in a report like this.
Yes, I agree. And this report is full of those kinds of I call them errors, right?
Yeah.
And you're right. Like, okay, is it possible that Ellen was some sort of contortionist? She went to some like amazing Barnum and Bailey Circus Academy in Florida and learned how to yes, the possibility, sure. The world's most flexible, double jointed person, that possibility is there. But what is the probability? What is the probability that something like that would happen? And typically when you do read a report like this, I don't see very many medical examiners jumping to leaps like that.
Yeah. Something else I want to, let me give some thank yous here to a homicide detective's daughter for becoming a member. Welcome aboard. I love that we have a homicide detective's daughter here. Christy Royer has been a member for 3 months, has loved the CC Crew family, most favorite true crime community. Oh, well, that's very sweet of you. Fala, damn it. Thank you so much for gifting the memberships. Appreciate that. Always good to hear from you. And Redondo Beach, I hope Josh Shapiro gets what he deserves. No presidential nod. Thank you for that, Redondo Beach. I want to get into what has the people most convinced that you cannot classify this as anything but a homicide. Point to one wound in particular, at least in from what I've heard. And that is, and I want to be able to put this up here. Let me see if I can handle the logistics of that. This is from the actual 32-page report. It's on page 28, and it's what she calls the stab wound of the posterior right neck. This is the wound that is associated with perforations of the muscles and dura of the cervical spinal cord.
Yeah.
Dr. Ross, I want to highlight this one point here. Dr. Ross, I don't want to lose it. Here we go. Most recent consultative report suggests that the histologic findings support a conclusion that Ellen was dead when this defect was created, and that was created during the course of an attack, making her manner of death homicide. So that people who support this scientific conclusion, autopsy-based conclusion, forensic conclusion, merely point to this one thing and say, listen, she was dead when this happened. How else could this not be a homicide? To kind of our point about, if she can't physically do it, it's a homicide. And if she has injuries that were post-death, it must be a homicide. Mm-hmm. However, she goes on to highlight other things. Dr. Emery talk about this could have been an injury that she didn't immediately become incapacitated. She could have, died shortly thereafter. It was inflicted, or it was inflicted by somebody else after her death, or it was inflicted by the autopsy. And then she goes on to essentially say, here it is. Therefore, this is her conclusion. Therefore, it is most reasonable to reach one of two conclusions about this spinal cord defect. Either it was the spinal cord defect was actually an artifact from the original autopsy, or that Ellen was alive when the spinal cord defect was caused. Again, you're not a doctor. I'm not a doctor. I know we're a little bit out of our lanes here, but what was your reaction to that? Have you heard other people talk about this point? I mean, this to me was like kind of the one thing I was looking for in this report is, how does she explain that?
Okay, so a couple things that come to mind here. First of all, Tom Brennan, early on in this investigation, was given permission to go in with an expert and examine all of the specimens that they had kept in the medical examiner's office, including this specimen. Tom says that he was there with the expert, which I believe was Dr. Ross, and Dr. Ross looked at it and described it as, no, this isn't just a simple puncture of the dura of the spinal column. This is nearly cut in half. That's how he described it. This is nearly cut in half. So either they're just really bad at dissection at the Philly medical examiner's office, or Ellen was stabbed in such a way that it nearly cut in half her spinal cord and did not bleed. Because what we're talking about here is vital response. When the heart is beating, it is pumping blood. We've got higher blood pressure than the outside atmosphere, right? Than the atmosphere in which we live. Therefore, if any puncture wound will bleed because there's pressure. In this case, it did not bleed. Now, in Dr. Emery's deposition, she does indeed talk about those three possibilities. And this was the very first time that anybody had heard of any of this. Joe Pedraza does such a good job in that deposition. So she does say that, but he goes, wait a minute, doctor, are you telling me that it's possible that this happened after Ellen died? And she just went, yeah, I mean, no pulse, no vital response. It was something like that, right? So the city makes a big deal of her saying, oh, she gave three possible explanations, which she did. This is one of those cases of the truth that lies, or the truth that misleads, right? But when pressed on it, she came to, it likely happened postmortem. So yeah, I don't think I answered your question.
No, you did answer my question, but it raises other questions, because this is the part that frustrates me. I mean, many of the things about this frustrate me, but a lot of investigative work is up to interpretation, right? A lot of, was the scene, she talks about how there was no signs of a struggle. Well, that's a subjective interpretation of what the scene may have looked like, right? Mm-hmm. There certainly are things there that were out of place. Could that be signs of a struggle? I don't know. That's kind of an argument. or was the place tossed completely? No, it wasn't. Does that mean that no struggle took place? These are very arguable points. But the things that shouldn't be arguable is the size of a injury to her spinal cord, right? And if you're telling me that one person is interpreting it and looking at it as if some sort of like minor defect that is easily explainable by the autopsy, and another person is looking at it and saying it was nearly severed, how do you reconcile those two? We're talking about science here. It's either one or the other. Where is all this interpretation coming into play?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the reality is that, yeah, again, professional quibbler here. So I do think that an autopsy report is at least half art and half science, right? What am I trying to say here? One of the things that really bothers me about the whole medical examiner system, and I think it's a good system, but one of the things that bothers me is that these actually are just opinions of doctors, right? They make the examination and they form an opinion based on lots of things, their own experience, their own biases, lots of different things. The problem is that the opinion is taken as science, as fact to the investigators. Oh, this scientist over here that did all of this autopsy work, who gave us an opinion, that is fact, and therefore we won't investigate it anymore. So, yeah, I don't know how to answer that question, Josh. It is frustrating.
No, but you make an excellent point, and this is something that gets lost a lot of times. That the reports of medical examiners are opinion evidence. It may be evidence, but it's opinion evidence, which is very different than physical evidence. The physical evidence is that she's got 20 stab wounds, okay? There's nothing that can be done about that. They can count those. That is math and science. The opinion evidence is what to make of that. But we oftentimes get confused or oftentimes misled into thinking that therefore, because a doctor said it and wrote it in a report, it takes on some sort of special meaning beyond the opinion evidence of any other expert. We hear experts called from both sides all the time. If this were to go to trial, this very case, you would have medical experts saying homicide and medical experts saying suicide. And both of them would have CVs as long as my arm, and you're supposed to sit there and go, one is science and one is not science. I mean, it's a very important point that you make that should not be lost. Yeah. Which brings me to, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking, in all the trials that I've sat through in my day job, there's one forensic pathologist that I used to just love watching him testify. Of course, they go through the whole process of saying, this is my curriculum vitae, and I've got 693 million years of study of all this and these accomplishments and everything. But I loved watching him because he was credible. He could explain anything to a lay person. He could take the science and he could break it down to what a jurist could, or a juror could understand. I would have loved this to go to trial. I would love still this to go to trial, because I think with that expert opinion, I think they'd be able to bring 20 different doctors in saying, I believe this is homicide, right? I just don't think that there are that many pathologists that would come to this conclusion on their own. So yeah, I don't know.
To that point, well, first of all, let me thank Susan Lewis. Women, for the super chat, women who do this to themselves don't often pick knives as their instrument of choice. Hi again, Gavin. Excellent point. I think a point that would be, again, an expert would likely highlight that as indicating that this was probably not self-harm.
Hey, Josh, there was evidence of a struggle, by the way. I mean, there was evidence of a struggle and cleanup.
Yeah.
Okay. The evidence of the struggle, the main thing is there's a dead woman on the ground with 20 stab wounds in her
And blood all over the place.
and blood all over the
Yeah.
place, knocked over knife set. And uh, I mean, she gets into the bruises in this report, Dr. Simon does, but the most recent, darkest, bluest, blackest bruises on her are on both of her wrists and on her left pad of her thumb, as if somebody was holding her hands. I mean, it is a recent, as in, I think, moments before death kind of bruise. So when you take those three things into consideration, there was a struggle. There were also things like, why did she have a brand new clean bathroom towel in her left hand? Why were there smudge marks where blood had been wiped up between her, basically between her ankles? You know, like, this is suspicious. This looks like a cleanup and looks like a struggle. And she just, as a matter of fact, she writes, um, no signs of a struggle.
This is a perfect segue to the next point I wanted to talk to you about, is something that we talked about before we started to go live, which is the way that she wrote this report. You had made the point, and I don't want to steal your thunder, but that your editor wouldn't allow you to print this the way that it was written. Explain to us what you mean by that.
There would be so much red ink. So back in the day, when a reporter would turn in their draft, it was a typewritten paper, and an editor would have their little red pen that they would put on their tongue, like we see in the movies, and start crossing things out, right? There would be so much red ink on this report that she wouldn't be able to read her own report. And the main quibble that I have when it comes to the way that she's written is that she writes as fact things that she does not know as fact. She knows that she may know that somebody stated it as fact, but she doesn't know that it's fact. And it's throughout all 32 pages of this report.
Yeah. Yeah. When you start to attribute as an established point something that you have not witnessed yourself, can confirm yourself, but is based upon essentially it's hearsay.
Mm-hmm.
The other way of putting what you just said is that the report is rife with hearsay.
Yes.
And that none of this would be allowed to test. She would not be allowed to testify in court in the similar way that she wrote this report. In other words, this would not come out in court the way that she's writing this, because it is relying on a bunch of stuff that's inadmissible, which is a point that should not be lost on this, especially when you're trying to write something with the, you start off with this introductory statement of this is independent review. Well, is it independent if you're relying upon things that you have not independently verified, but you're going off of what you've been told, i.e. no signs of struggle, i.e. whatever other conclusory kind of information she's included in this.
And one of the conclusions that she came to was that the door was latched from the inside.
Right.
There is nobody who saw the door latched from the inside. The only person who ever said the door was latched from the inside was Sam Goldberg. Now, I'm not pointing fingers. I'm not accusing anybody, but that you got to figure that he's the number one suspect in any homicide investigation, right? He's the live-in boyfriend. He was the last person to see her. He was admittedly, they had tiffs every once in a while. People could hear them arguing every once in a while. Yeah, they would, if this were investigated as a homicide, he would be the first suspect, right? And for some reason, him telling investigators that the door was latched from the inside is taken as gospel, and it drives me crazy. Put on your skeptical investigator hats. You can't take his word for that. And I don't think it ever was. I think the evidence shows that the door was never latched.
Yeah. Redondo Beach, thank you again. Also ridiculous how Sam victim blames. Interesting point. Song Bits Laura says, great channel. Appreciate the kind words there, Song Bits. Debbie W says, Bob Mata said it was written more like a police report than a medical examiner's report. That's a good point. I think it's actually written more like the medical examiner's report in anticipation of testimony for one side. And in other words, like,
yes,
this was the report that you hand over when you know you're going to go testify to a certain opinion. You know, it I don't know. Again, it's shocking to me that she couldn't come. I feel like she could have taken the same facts and everything else known and arrived at a different conclusion. Nothing about the report led us towards the inevitable conclusion that she feels she found. It, to me, could have easily been argued in a different way. But I wanted to read a response from the Greenberg's attorneys, because this kind of sums up a lot of what we're talking about. And then I want to talk about what next now for the family. But this is lawyers William Trask and Joseph Pedraza. There they are. This was kind of a joint statement from them. They called it deeply flawed, a premeditated conclusion, but then, quote, by ignoring key evidence that contradicts suicide, the extensive 3D photogrammetry proving Ellen could not self-inflict all the wounds, unexplained bruises, missing surveillance footage, an intact lock, accounts of a toxic relationship, etc. Simon builds a flimsy case on distorted portrayals of Ellen's mental health, propped up by cynical distortions of Ellen's managed anxiety, a condition widely experienced daily by over 40 million Americans. They make a lot of great points there. Is there anything that you want to jump into? Because I know there's something I want to highlight.
Yeah, the bruises.
Yeah.
Dr. Simon, you know, the way this report was written, it was almost like, hey, here are all the bad things that Dr. Osborne did. Here are all the mistakes that Dr. Osborne did. And with the exception of a few things here and there, like we just read about, you know, Dr. Emery and so forth, it really reads like, yeah, this was a really, really bad investigation, and it's leaning toward homicide, and then like left turn on page 32. Therefore, I conclude it was suicide. That's the way it feels. But one of the things that she points out in her excoriation of Dr. Osborne's work is that Dr. Osborne said that there were 3 constellations totaling 11 bruises on Ellen's body. She adds another 20. In my opinion, again, not a doctor, layperson, I count 59, and I have gone through it multiple times, like marking all the bruises that I see on her body from all the different points of view. I count 59 bruises on her body. The most important one to me, or I guess the important few to me, are a series of bruises that are in the shape of a thumbprint, a fingerprint, and the webbing between the thumb and the index finger. And so it just looks like she was throttled. She was held by her neck. And as they opened up Ellen in the autopsy, they you know, deflect the skin back and they start dissecting the neck. They're deflecting up all of the different neck strap muscles. There is a giant hemorrhage. It's like the size of a nickel right in the middle of her neck. Like, and I did a whole video on this. Josh and Sandy let me show this. So I cropped it up really tight, you know, but like Ellen was strangled, everybody. Ellen was strangled in that moment. Giant hemorrhage on the inside of her neck, lots of bruising, fresh bruising around her neck. She doesn't bring this up. Well, I don't know. It just, to me, that's another sign of a struggle.
Yeah.
You know, the most, what's the word I'm looking for? The part on our body that is most available to being, dude, what is the word that I'm looking for? the human neck is the weakest part of our body, and the easiest way to kill a person is at the neck.
Yeah.
Our
Yeah.
instincts are to protect at all costs our neck. If you see, I keep bumping my mic. Sorry about that. It's because I'm so passionate about this. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, I think I'm at about 130 beats a minute here.
Right.
That if there is evidence of strangulation, of manual strangulation, that goes to, in my opinion, that there was a struggle going on.
Yeah.
It's obvious.
Yeah. The part that stood out, and I just wanted to highlight a comment here from Marie Palacio. It's a very nice comment, but I also wanted to give a shout out to those of us who are watching on X. Thank you so much. If you're there, please say hi. She says, very interesting to hear about the report from a lawyer's perspective. Appreciate that. You know, I was about to say we could talk about this for hours. You have talked about this for hours. We could talk about this for years and days.
Yeah.
But as I'm sitting here right now, the thing that's annoying me the most is this dismissive statement that she makes about Ellen, saying a young woman suffering from anxiety, and just kind of whistles past the graveyard on that. And then the attorneys point out, anxiety, by the way, a condition experienced daily by over 40 million Americans. Everybody's got anxiety.
Yeah.
Like the idea that you're going to say, well, you know, I mean, she did suffer from anxiety. That is somehow how you're connecting her behavior to somebody who stabs themselves all about their body in an attempt to commit suicide out of nowhere, with no note, with nothing leading up to it. Now, we know that she was suffering from stress. She had issues with her job. Who knows what their relationship was like? Fine. But again, nothing that if this was a person who was on heavy psychotropic drugs, who had been dealing with mental issues for years and seeing a psychologist, and if we in and out of institutions, Gavin, you and I would probably not be having the same conversation.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
But we take a woman who is living a life no different than 40 million other Americans, and I'll add to probably a couple of hundred other Americans who haven't been diagnosed with anxiety and depression issues. And you're going to say that explains the out of the blue, middle of the day, nothing setting it off, grabbing a knife and stabbing yourself to death? That's the part that, as I sit here right now, I can't get over the most, is there was no lip service given to that.
Yeah. And remember, according to Dr. Berman, was it Berman? I think it was Ellen Berman was the psychiatrist that Ellen was seeing. First of all, she was not suicidal. She was not fearful that Ellen would do that to herself. And the medications that she was using were working. She was getting sleep. She was, she was talking to her friends. She was talking to her parents. She was feeling much better. And when they did toxicology on Ellen, the levels of those prescription drugs that were in her system were below therapeutic levels. Yeah. So it was as if Ellen was feeling better, not taking as much, and yeah. Another thing, there is one part and only one part in all of the documentation that I have seen from the police that mentions depression. Everything else is anxiety. The only time depression comes up is when Sam Goldberg says it, and he says it once. And in this report, she says Ellen was depressed. So, yeah, Ellen did not do this to herself. Come on. And you're right. If she had spent years under a psychiatrist's care, if she had made attempts on her life before, if there were all of these other things, I would say, yeah. In fact, Josh, and I'm sorry to take over. I'm talking here, but Josh and Sandy through Tom Brennan allowed me to to have her devices. And with my technological background, I was able to do, well, not a forensic investigation, but a very high level investigation of all the databases, all of the records, everything that is kept on those. I have 3 of her computers and her phone. I was kind of hoping that I would find that Ellen wasn't the person that I had grown to believe that she was. Right? I was looking for anything like, and this is weird, but everybody has their like kinks, their weirdness stuff that they don't share with the world. I was on the lookout for all of that. And had I found it, I would have changed my mind about this, right? But no, Ellen was exactly the person that we all think she was. She was a young professional, highly educated, in a complicated relationship. I believe an abusive relationship, going through all of the I guess side effects of everything that she had been through. But she was a regular young woman who was in a bad position, was trying to find a way out of it, and ultimately could not, lost her life.
I imagine everybody listening tonight can talk about similar situations of dealing with struggles, dealing with money problems, dealing with bad situations, and none of them are less or more serious than what she was dealing with. Again, that's the part to me. People commit suicide in very bizarre ways. Sometimes it's hard for families to deal with that. There are cases where the circumstances are bizarre. I get all of that. The part that is just kind of most troubling to me is that this report doesn't seem to address why in the world this woman would choose to do this thing to herself out of nowhere. Yeah. Last question I wanted, because I've taken a lot of your time and I really appreciate you being so generous with your time and sharing your thoughts on this case that you've been living with for so long. Last thing I want to ask you about this is the part of that statement from the attorneys says, this report is an embarrassment to the city and an insult to Ellen and her family. Ellen's family just wanted the truth. It is clear the truth will not come from Philadelphia's law enforcement machinery. Though Ellen's city turned its back on her, we will continue through other avenues to get justice for her murder by any means necessary. And that echoes some of the comments that I've been reading tonight. Barb Russell says, Gavin, Josh, what can be done to correct this horrible situation? Best Nancy says, Gavin and Josh, what can we do? Who should we write? What do we say? Many people want to know what now? Is this the end of the road? Is there other avenues to pursue? Is there things that people who care in the community can do? Her attorneys are talking big about, they're not done fighting the fight, but where really does this leave us?
That is a very good question. And that's been the $64,000 question since Friday when this report came out. A couple things. I was that Tuesday? It was it was just yesterday. Oh my goodness. Okay. So yesterday, I attended a remote hearing with Judge Carpenter, Joe Pedraza, the city's attorneys, the whole thing. And there were a couple of moments of what we would call in literature foreshadowing. So Judge Carpenter asked Joe, okay, so is this matter concluded, at least in terms of this case? Right? She asked him, like, she fully expects to be back on another case with the Greenbergs. And Mr. Pedraza says, yes, Your Honor, thank you very much for helping us get this resolution. We consider the matter closed and we'll see what the future brings. So I think Joe and Will are coming up with a strategy for next steps. When I asked Josh and Sandy, they're adamant that they're not done fighting. They are not done fighting. And soon they will be, in a meeting, they will talk with Joe and Will and decide what next steps to take. Remember, this case, this lawsuit was only about The Greenbergs alleging that there was a conspiracy to cover up the murder of their daughter. And that's it.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you're more creative on the law than I am, but I think there are probably 10 other lawsuits that they could bring on this against the city and other people.
Yeah. Well, if they do,
I'm sorry, real quick. I think the main strategy on this one was if they could get the, it's not a guilty verdict. What is it? If the jury could find in their favor on something like this, I think Joe and Will were banking on that, making it the key to open up the door of time barred actions. So there are statutes of limitations, right? So I think they wanted to get to a wrongful death. This is me talking, not them. I think they were trying to get to a wrongful death lawsuit, but they're barred by statutes of limitations.
Yes.
But I think that I think they'll have plenty more to do.
I understand. Yeah. They usually the statute for something like this is 2 years in civil cases, wrongful deaths, but you can toll that if there is wrongdoing, if there's some sort of fraudulent, negligent activity that makes it so that you weren't able to discover the necessary underpinnings of that wrongful death lawsuit, they could make that argument. The interesting thing about wrongful death is now you're talking about subpoenas, you're talking about depositions, you're talking about requests for documents. There's a lot that could open up. Well, if there are developments on this case, I hope that you will come back on and share all of this with us. But you've been so generous with your time. Everybody, go subscribe right now to Gavin Fish's channel. I'm sure most of you are anyways. And if you're here, send him some love next time that he's on the channel, and send him some juice boxes and let him know that the Courtroom Confidential community's behind him in the continued fight. Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate it. All right. Let's get to, big thank you to Gavin for that. He's doing the real heavy lifting on this case, and I appreciate him spending some time with us to talk about it. And we'll continue to follow it. I mean, I do believe him when he says that this is not the end of it. I think that we're going to hear more about this. It's just one of those things that it bothers too many people to their core to feel that this could possibly be the end to it. And he makes an excellent point. The true crime community, when they get together and they want to do something, they can accomplish some pretty incredible things. So we will continue to follow it and give you guys updates. Let me give you some updates on some other cases I promised you we would, and then get you all out of here after some announcements. First of all, Bionca Ellis. This is the case, the horrible stabbing of a 3-year-old Julian Wood. It took place in June of last year in North Olmsted, Ohio. This was the case where she was pleading not guilty by reason of insanity. She attacked this beautiful young boy out of nowhere with a knife, stabbing him to death in front of his mother. She was found guilty on all counts today, including aggravated murder and attempted murder. And thank God for that. She will be sentenced on October 27th. We have the closing arguments and the verdict for this case up on our sister channels, Courtroom Confidential live trial. So if you want to check out the arguments made in that case and you want to watch the verdict, please go check it out on Courtroom Confidential live trials. Courtney Clenney out of Miami, Florida, another case that we've been following closely. This is for the stabbing death of Christian Obumseli, who was 27 years old and was her boyfriend at the time, April 2022 in Miami. It's got delayed again. A trial was expected to begin December 1st. It has been delayed again because of pending motions. There's a motion to dismiss followed by the defense. Prosecutorial misconduct. They're trying to disqualify the entire prosecution's office. They're claiming young blood violations. If you know, you know. Interesting thing about this, though, because it's getting delayed again, the judge is going to have a bond hearing. She's been in jail this entire time since April of 2022, or August. I think she was actually arrested. That's a long time. I know it's a first-degree murder case, but that still seems extraordinary to me to have no bail set in this case. So she's going to have a bond hearing on November 4th. We will follow that. And then December 5th has been set as the deadline for the prosecution to respond to all these motions, but they're just saying they're not ready to go. So it's unfortunate. It's a case we were hoping to follow, a trial we were hoping to follow. Not going to happen anytime soon, it doesn't look like, but maybe she will get a chance at getting bond set. And then finally, Christopher Schultes. I don't care how many times you tell me, it looks like it's pronounced Schultz. This is the horrific case out of Pima County, Arizona, where he is standing trial for the murder of his 2-year-old daughter, his own daughter, who he left inside of his vehicle in the middle of summer, July 9th, 2024, in Arizona. It reached temperatures of 109 degrees that day, and she was left inside of the vehicle for 3 hours. He did leave the air conditioning running, but it shut off automatically after half an hour. And prosecutors are saying he knew that and he should have known better. His daughter's name was Parker, 2 years old. Breaks my heart. Again, these cases, they get to me really badly. The judge in this case, though, made an interesting decision, and we're probably going to get more into this during our weekly roundup. What does this all mean, and why did the judge do this? But you may have heard that at the time, Flora Paris says, this man, I can't with this man, video games. Well, not only video games, Flora, the prosecution has evidence that he was searching for pornography on his PlayStation, something I didn't even know was possible. The judge has said that she is not going to allow that evidence, not going to allow testimony to that or evidence of that. This is Judge Kimberly Ortiz. She's saying that the prosecution can say that he was inside, that he was playing video games, that he was doing other things, but not that he was searching for pornography. Why? We'll get into it more in the weekly roundup, but I really, as much as you all are bothered by this, I think it was the right decision by the judge. When you start to talk about a man allowing his daughter to die in a hot car because he was too busy watching porn, you're going to get a lot of people who are not going to listen to any other evidence in that case. And they're going to start making decisions based purely on their emotions and gut reaction to how disgusting they feel that is. Here's what I'll say. Rightfully so, they should be disgusted by that. But should they be basing their conviction of this man on that? Is that allowing the prejudicial nature of the evidence to outweigh its probative value? Perhaps. The other thing the judge said is that the judge is going to allow prior uncharged acts, other times that he's done this, where his children will testify that he's left them in the vehicle before themselves. By the way, much more convincing evidence in this case. That case is expected to go to trial on October 27th, and we are trying to see if they're going to televise it so that we can play it for you all on Courtroom Confidential live trials. Brendan Benfield, that was another case that was expected to go to trial. T. Suze, who is now become the court clerk of all things true crime throughout the United States, is telling me that that trial has been delayed. So we're looking for the next trial to put up on Courtroom Confidential live trials, and it may just be the Christopher Schultes/Schultz case, depending on who you want to listen to. All right, we have some announcements for you coming up for next week. But before we get into all of that, please take a quick look at this. I just wanted to share with you a story that happened to me at CrimeCon this year. If you're a follower of this channel, you already know, but I lost temporarily my passport. I've got it back now. Thank you very much. But while it was gone, it is such an unnerving feeling to know that your personal information could be in the hands of another person. But what brought me a little peace of mind was knowing that I had identity theft insurance through Aura, our first ever sponsor. If you've ever wondered how scammers get your information and why your inbox is full of junk, this is why. Data brokers collect and sell your information without your permission, and they make billions doing it. And that is why we are proud to partner with Aura. Aura does the hard work for you. They scrub your information from the internet, protecting it from those shady sites and making sure that your information is kept safe. But it's more than just data removal. It's also about digital security. That's why I felt such comfort even when my passport was lost. You get dark web alerts, bank fraud monitoring, a VPN, antivirus, a password manager, and up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all in one app. Try Aura today, free for 14 days at aura.com/courtroomconfidential. It's free to try. It protects you and it helps support the show. Please check it out. I think that guy's got bigger problems than just Aura. I mean, how do you lose your passport? Keep it together, sir. Have you seen our website? Go to thecourtroomconfidential.com, and here's what you're going to find. 1, you can leave us a message. We have a show every Sunday. For those of you who have never seen it, check it out. For those of you who love Sunday Funday, tell everybody else about it. We answer your questions, your true crime questions, live every Sunday. And the way that you can leave a question is to go to thecourtroomconfidential.com and click on send us a message, and we will answer those questions live. Also, if you've seen about our membership program, you've heard people are members, you saw them getting gifted memberships, and you want to be a member yourself, go to thecourtroomconfidential.com and click on become a member, and you can learn about all of the benefits of membership. And finally, the shirt is pistachio frost, says Pammy. She knows that. Barb Russell says, no, it's not. It's Kool-Aid blue. And they all know that. Johnny Nashville says it's chambray, busting out the chambray. Well, whatever it is, you can find it at thecourtroomconfidential.com on our shop. We've got this color plus a bunch of other colors. It's Blue Lagoon, everybody. Blue Lagoon. This design, many other designs. You can get tumblers. You can get Pinot on the go. You can get mugs. What else do we got? I got to get more stuff down here to show up. Oh, this one. We got a bunch of stuff for you guys to check out at the Courtroom Confidential shop. Tisu says that color is being retired soon for fall colors. What is going on? What is this nonsense? I guess more announcements on that to follow. Chihuahua Mama says blue ice frost. Monday, what did you miss on Monday? We had the true crime docket for all things coming up this week that included Corey Richins, Donna Adelson, Luigi Mangione, Courtney Clenney. Stay tuned. This Friday, we are going to be doing our live weekly roundup at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 Eastern. We're going to be talking about Luigi Mangione and Ellen Greenberg and Donna Adelson and Bionca Ellis and a bunch of other cases that are going to take place this week. Tune in live, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern on this channel. Sunday, despite what I told you, I'm a big liar. We are not going to have a Sunday Fun Day this Sunday. Sad, tears all around. Instead, we're giving you a special live premiere of the next in our conversation series. We sat down with Scott Rouse from the behavior panel. He was the fourth member. He was the fourth Beatle that we were missing from the behavior panel. It's like we talked to everybody and now we were missing Ringo. Well, we got Ringo. And we spoke to him and we had an excellent conversation. The guy's led a fascinating life. I really walked away from this conversation feeling like I need to live more life because he's done it all. So check that out. It will be a live premiere at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern this coming Sunday. Sunday Fun Day will be back the following week. So don't go anywhere, everybody. Still leave us those messages. Still tune in. And then finally, October 25th, that is not this Saturday, but the following Saturday, we are going to have our October members only live. So if you are a member and you're in the classified level and above, come to our Saturday, October 25th, October members only live. It's a great time. It's fun. You get to see Kaylin and Tiffany and less of me and more of them. And it's a great time. And we talk about all sorts of goofy stuff. So that will be at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern on October 25th. Lastly, CrimeCon is coming up again. This time it's in Vegas. This time it's from May 29th through 31st. We're going to be there. It's going to be a party. You're going to love it. We hope to see you all there. And if you need one more reason, if Vegas wasn't enough and the Courtroom Confidential crew wasn't enough, we'll give you 10% off. Go to enter the word courtroom, all in caps, all one word at checkout. You get 10% off. Shy Gal's going to be there. That's it. That's all you need to know. Shy Gal will be there. You all should be there then. Finally, let me give a big shout out to Shy Gal and Afton and Kathy and therapists. You are incredible mods, and we can't thank you enough for everything that you do. Appreciate you keeping everybody in line and all for your hard work. Kaylin, you're the best. You make everything run so smoothly and make us all look so good. And Tiff, you are, as always, the best thing that ever happened to me. Thank you guys so much for everything. We will see you soon. Have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday, and we'll see you all live on Friday. Take care.